Welcome to the Sage Advice Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Karen Larkin. Karen is the CFO of Beemok Capital in Charleston, South Carolina, an ultra-high net worth, multi-generational, single-family office. She leads strategic long-range financial planning for the firm's multiple business entities, including overseeing corporate development, mergers and acquisitions, integrations, and investor relations for the company. Before being named CFO of Beemok Capital, she was the Vice President, Multifamily Office Development at the Ayco Company. Karen earned her MBA in Entrepreneurial Business from Babson College and a BS from Accounting from Boston College, Carroll School of Management. Welcome to the Sage Advice Podcast, Karen Larkin.
Hi, Ed. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate being able to be here and have a talk with you.
Well, first off, Karen, why do you do what you do?
Honestly, Ed, I think I was born to do this kind of a job. I always have liked numbers since I was a kid. CFO, that's what we're in charge of. We're in charge of the money, in charge of the numbers. I'm also very good at planning. I really enjoy seeing things come together. I like to understand outcomes and problem solve. And I find that financials tell a story. You have to understand that story. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to be able to put all of these skills together and be in charge of a lot of these different businesses that this family is involved in.
And what are perhaps the 2 or 3 factors that have really helped you to be successful in your role?
I've received a lot of advice over the past 25 years of working in a variety of different roles throughout my career. And honestly, one of the key factors that I truly think has helped me be very successful is listening. I think that you have to listen. Listen to your fellow staff members, listen to clients, listen to customers, listen to family, even in your personal life. You have to listen to where there's issues. You have to listen for constructive criticism. And you have to just have your eyes and ears open for opportunities. I would say another key factor for sure that I have experienced and I think has helped me to be successful is a very simple 4-letter word called grit. I think grit is important for all kids to learn and embrace. It's just patience and perseverance. You have to see something through. You've got to know that you can do it. I think part of being a leader is understanding the law of diminishing returns. However, on that patience and perseverance, like sometimes you do have to realize where to stop. There is a materiality threshold to things, but you really do have to keep at it. You don't want to just quit too soon. So I find both of those things are very key factors. I will briefly touch upon a third factor that is something that I teach my own 2 sons in my personal life. I use the key phrase, who is they? And I put they in quotes. I find that a lot of times when you're just living your life, you hear people say, like, why don't they fix this? Why don't they do something about this? Whether it's a pothole in your road or, manufacturing defects or whatever it could be. And I live a life of trying to understand who they is. Who is they? And how can you influence they? Can you influence some sort of desired result? So I find that with knowing that you're trying to get a desired result out of something, it can truly help you be successful in your current role.
And those are some pretty great principles to live by, Karen. But I'm wondering if you had a specific piece of advice that you're giving to finance leaders during the unprecedented times that we're living through with COVID.
Honestly, this COVID experience has been very, very interesting for a lot of us. We have businesses that we have had to really look at changing some of our cash flow management. Some of our businesses are event planning businesses where we've had concerts canceled, tournaments canceled. So it's been very, very interesting. The piece of advice that I have is genuinely financials tell a story. I believe that fundamentally. I believe it in your personal life. What you spend your money on, you spend your money on things that are important to you. Financials in a business tell a story. You have to understand that story. The story has to be factually accurate, truthful, and it has to be real time. Having something that's old and stale and you're still trying to cobble it together helps nobody. I think that understanding your fundamental story, pieces of revenue coming in, is somebody else's expense. Why did they spend it and why did they spend it with you? Understanding your revenue stream, what it is that you're selling. And then every single piece of expense in your architecture. I don't care if it's on a credit card. I don't care if it's a wire transfer. Every expense, it's either a payment to a vendor or a payment to an employee. Understand why you spent that money. What were you trying to accomplish? How are you putting things together with your product you're selling or your service you're providing? And understanding that story, that fluid story, can help you make nimble adjustments that help you have an actionable outcome. You need that story to make decisions. So my advice is to understand the story.
And you've got an upcoming webinar that you're doing for us here at Sage Intacct on the best practices of a modern financial services firm, a CFO's journey. Can you give us a peek into what you'll be covering there?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this webinar. Beemok Capital is a startup. We have only been in business for 2 years. The ultra high net worth family has been growing their wealth for perhaps the last decade or so, has really had a lot of distributions. So it's interesting to see how they're redistributing their money and starting up an office that fundamentally is the central finance department for operating businesses, passive investments, investment partnerships, nonprofits. We actually have operating nonprofits. We're at the core center of all of it. And we had ground zero. I'm talking ground zero from payroll, ground zero from rental space, ground zero from our financial architecture. Some of these businesses that I had to take over were existing, and they might have been in QuickBooks Enterprise or QuickBooks Online or Excel. We've had acquisitions, we've had startups. So really understanding the financial architecture and all the different pieces of the money flows has been really interesting. And Sage Intacct has been right in the middle of that. So I think the webinar will go into more detail on how we chose Intacct and what it's been doing to help our financial structure and the end users of the dashboard reporting that we're preparing.
And Karen, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero?
So I would like, if it's okay, to just give two heroes, because if I don't give a fictional hero, all my staff will wonder why I did not mention my favorite Wonder Woman, of course, because I have statues and posters of her in my office. So I love that girls today have an amazing superhero to look up and magnify. But honestly, I do have someone who popped into my head immediately when you asked me that question. I do have a business role model, and it's Meg Whitman of back in the eBay, HP. She's now doing Quibi. I have always really had a very high esteem for Meg Whitman. I think that she has had an amazing career. If you look at her bio, she's worked for amazing companies. She's had great experiences. And I did have an opportunity well over 10 years ago to meet her. And I had a couple of different opportunities to spend a tiny bit of time with her. She was very down to earth, very approachable. And I have to say, she was a good listener and she asked good questions. She's clearly very smart. So I do have a signed copy of her Power of Many book on my shelf in my office. And, back a long time ago, more than 10 years ago, I did buy one of her Meg 2010 bumper stickers when she was running for governor of California. So I just think that she has always displayed a lot of the factors that I just presented. So I like having her as a role model, and I hope that I can be role models to some of the young women coming up the pipe.
And lastly, Karen, how can somebody contact you?
The best way to contact me is probably by email. K Larkin, my last name Larkin, first initial K, and at beemok.com. And because Beemok always comes across so difficultly whenever we're talking, I've gotten very accustomed to the military speak, and that would be Bravo, Echo, Echo, Mike, Oscar, Kilo, Beemok.com. So I'm always reachable.
All right. And there'll be a link provided in the show notes here to the best practices of a modern financial services firm, a CFO's journey. Karen Larkin, thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Advice podcast.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
For more Sage Advice, visit and subscribe at sageadvicepodcast.com.